Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duckbricks. I'm Chris, and this is the brand new LEGO Friends Botanical Garden. It is one of the most beautiful looking LEGO buildings that we've honestly ever gotten in a standard retail LEGO set. The architecture is really cool. It comes with all sorts of new recolors, plants, and animals, and is a very unique style of building, but there's only one problem. It's only half a building, where as you can see, to enable playability, they've basically just made the building be completely open air, where just half of it is in the set, and from the front, it looks great, but from the back, you can clearly see that it has literally been chopped in half. So, what I've done is I've taken, not one, but 2 copies of the LEGO Friends Botanical Garden set, and thanks to a whole host of mock-ups all around the internet, I'm going to try my hand at combining them into one cohesive building that also can be integrated into my LEGO city. And so, without further ado, I'm going to share my quick thoughts on what I think of the first part of the set, which is kind of the half of the building that is opened up, and then we're going to walk through the process of combining 2 versions of this set into one single build, altogether forming a massive baseplate size botanical garden. Let's do it. So this right here is the new LEGO Friends Botanical Garden. It may be one of the most beautiful, not just LEGO Friends sets, but just beautiful LEGO building sets that has ever come out, pretty much ever. It depicts a charming botanical garden with a nice glass roof, a gorgeous little pond with little brown duckities swimming around in the water itself. You have some great architecture of the archways, the sand green mixed with the white, mixed with the transparent clear windows, and of course a waterfall cascading down the side, makes this such an interesting and visually impressive set, and you can turn it around and see the interior as well, seeing all sorts of different plants on display, as well as a large tree growing in the center with butterflies swirling around it. There's only one problem. It's only really half a building, whereas you can see here, from the front, this looks incredible. This almost looks like a finished full-on building from the front, but then as you turn it around, obviously, this is only really half a set because they wanted to make it fully open and playable so people can get in there and actually be able to appreciate all the details. Which I like, but I also like having buildings be fully finished. So what I've done is I've bought a second copy of this set to be able to combine them together and see what it looks like when you take just 2 copies of the set and maybe a couple of extra parts and see what we can do to combine them into one build. Now, here's the thing. Most of the work has already been done for me. There are a ton of builds online, which people literally made basically on the day this set actually released, taking 2 copies of the set and combining them together. Now, I've specifically chosen the one that is meant to integrate it into a modular building style of street. The reason for this is because, well, I want to add this to my LEGO city. So my LEGO city is using the modular building style, so I'm going to try to make this a modular building type of setup. So obviously some of the uniqueness of the curved base plate is gone. It is really just going to be on a custom single-sided base plate with just one flat end. But I'm so excited to do this because I really want to put this in my city. I rarely ever actually modify official LEGO sets, but this one was so good, and this one was also just begging to be completed as a full-on building that I just had to. So let's go ahead and do that right now, but I also have linked a ton of these other designs in the description below. If you don't want to make it a modular building, there are designs out there, free instructions, where you can just buy 2 of these, combine them, and it looks like a fully finished building with just 2 copies of these without needing any additional pieces. What I'm doing now will include some additional pieces, so just a heads up, you will need to be aware of that, but again, there are other options out there if you do not want to use pieces other than just the ones in the set, so I'm going to go ahead and put links to those in the description below as well. I'm just doing the one that fits my purposes the best. I cannot wait, so let's transform this right now. Okay, so here's our original copy of the Botanical Gardens. Here are all the bags to a second copy, as well as a Ziploc full of pieces I've collected from my own collection, which are just the additional pieces required to make this conversion. That being said, there are again instructions out there if you do not want to use any additional pieces and just use the parts in the sets. However, I just figured I wanted to do the modular version, so I got a few extras, plus the base plate. Let's go. A couple nights ago, between the hours of 11 p.m. to 3 a.m., I actually got the chance to build this live on Twitch. Here's a bit of a snippet in terms of how that build went. I actually had a really fun time doing it, and it was surprisingly really time-consuming. I thought that I wouldn't have to actually rebuild a lot of it because I had already built the original set, but I ended up having to mostly disassemble a lot of the build itself and start completely from scratch, which was actually a really good thing because while this retains the aesthetic of the original, it absolutely does so many many unique things in different ways to make it so much more interesting. Okay, so after all that work, this is the final product, the fully modular style botanical garden. And these were the pieces left over, which was really impressive to me because that means that this model was incredibly smart with its part usage. There's almost basically just standard spare parts left over. Obviously, you've got a couple of archways, you have one extra transparent clear window piece, which is definitely going to be useful for other creations, an extra dish, but really for the most part, basically every single piece was used in the set itself. Almost every single one. And I was so impressed after I finished this just how compact it was in terms of really utilizing every single piece. All the stickers are used, all the little pond elements are used. This feels like a complete model, and it made me feel really happy because a lot of times when you combine two sets, the parts left over are pretty significant. Like for example, when I built the alternate model for the Ice Dragon mech from Ninjago, I had a ton of leftover pieces and felt like I probably could have just gotten away with buying the extra pieces online instead of having to buy a second copy of the set. But this? Oh no. You use basically every single piece, bar just a couple, in this amazing build, and that really made me appreciate it even more than I already am. So I'm going to set aside some of the side stuff because first of all you have the extra mini dolls here, so I'll set them aside. You also have a couple of buckets as well as picnic tables. These were also side builds for the original set, so they kind of just exist as their own thing. The only thing is that there are a couple of plants that you kind of have to put on the side. These are the only leftover plants from the second copy of the set that don't really have a space in the model. I mean, you can put them wherever you want, there's a lot of interior space, but for now I'm just going to leave them out just so we can focus in on the main modular building. So first of all, wow, I want to just showcase how much of an improvement this is over the original design, because there's a lot more going on with this model than the actual model that the original set was part of, which basically just was this one corner with the pond sticking out this way instead, or I guess it was the other way. So it was more like this. So you had a really nice kind of open entrance area here, you had the pond sticking out here, but that was basically it, and it was just a chopped in half model that really just had an open space. But here, this is full 360 degrees of rotation where you can see so much detail was packed into this build. There's a lot of stuff to take in here, and I'm a huge fan of how they even integrated the modular building style of sidewalk here. Like you can see, this is where the standard modular building road would actually come in for a sidewalk leading up to the stairs into the garden itself. It's just so well done. So overall, I think the exterior is done really well. As I was building this live, there were a couple of comments that did make note of the fact that the ponds were basically symmetrical, which is definitely something that you can, again, it's LEGO, choose to decide how you want to do it. I chose to keep the pond symmetrical because I felt like it made sense for a botanical garden, but what I did instead is that I also changed around the positioning of the little brown duckities as well as the flowers, the lily pads, and whatnot to just make it feel a little bit more unique in the way it was done. The same for the trees. It essentially asked you to make the same exact tree and plop it down on either side, but at least for one of them I switched around the positioning of one of the flowers, like this upper flower is here, this upper flower is here, just to give it a little bit of a different look and feel compared to the other stuff included in the set. Now this does actually make a number of improvements to the exterior of the actual set because there were extra pieces. We actually have butterflies that are flying around the building itself. So you've got black butterflies and kind of this cool yellow butterfly, which is just so nice. You also have the inclusion of extra trees going around the back of the botanical garden because you have just basically the identical copy of the center tree but just replicated on the back, and this entire area is all new but feels like it really fits the style of the set so well, especially this back archway. It really does feel like the architecture of the set itself. But the most impressive improvement, at least to me, is the fact that the roof is actually removable. Much like any good modular building, you need to be able to get into the inside, so you can actually remove the roof, and we'll take a look at that in a second, but first of all, I just kind of want to appreciate the exterior of this build first. So, moving on to here, you have two sets of entrances. You have the entrance doorway here, you have the beautiful little pond where you can see fish swimming underneath the lake, just like in the original set, which is so nice, and I really like how they were able to include both ponds on either side because it does feel like a genuine, like, classic style of layout for a botanical garden. You've got a really nice little bench here to just sit in and relax. Of course, you have the doorway on this side entering the actual botanical garden itself. And this is just a really nice presentation style view where you can really make this feel like it is a real life building. Like, this is so nice how it extends forwards, and overall, just a big fan of how this came together. Now, initially, what they had done, which I did like about the original set, was that these waterfall type pieces did cascade down into the pool itself. Obviously, though, since this is on a modular building template, they just kind of decided to make this a fountain that's maybe cascading down to something underground or whatnot. It's understandable. I did like it how they had these waterfalls cascading into the pond, but obviously for the modular building template, you kind of have to work with what you've got. Now, one note is that I have changed the color of these. These are supposed to be the same color as the nougat bricks here. I just didn't have that many 1x2 nougat bricks with a Technic hole running through them spare, so I just kind of used gray because honestly, these are going to be covered up by the modular stuff anyway. Moving on to the back, this is where the real ingenuity comes in to really make this feel like a more unique modular building. One thing that I really love is the utilization of these transparent clear column elements, which mostly were just used in the original set to kind of be used up here, but now, since we are completing the full-on dome and having all the quarter cylinders, we can actually use these for the back wall, and it really does feel that it's open air. It gives it a very unique vibe in terms of the way that everything is put together, and of course you have a really nice window on the back here to get a good glimpse of the different colors of plants on the inside that continues all the way up to the outside as well. Moving on inwards, these are open air entries, so these are nice that they're just kind of open air archways to be able to just walk on in and be able to enjoy the plants. You have plants on this side, you have plants on this side, and they basically are symmetrical. You have the same plants on either side, but I think that makes a lot of sense for a botanical garden to kind of keep the display like so. Now, one thing that is really nice is that, again, as we continue around, this is basically symmetrical, but this required a lot of rebuilding. It did not just take taking the initial set and plonking it down in a base plate. This actually requires a lot of extra engineering because, again, the entire roof area has been engineered to be cohesive, stable, but also removable. So let's take a look at that right now so we can move our way onto the inside, because the exterior of this is so nice, but it has a beautiful interior as well. So here's how this works. You essentially just kind of lift both of these up, and there you go. That just comes out. Now, the unfortunate thing is that this did just get knocked off, so you just have to be a little bit careful. But with that, this entire section is its own thing. Like, this exists as its own set of platforms. Oh, this came up with it. That probably should have stayed on here. But for the most part, like, this is what you can see. This is the clear dome, which I think is really cool how you're able to complete the full-on dome utilizing these clear elements. It just looks so good. And you have the butterflies swirling around above, which is just so nice of a feature to have. And once the roof is removed here, so let me just get the butterflies straightened out like so. You of course have the fountains that are actually connected to the roof itself. Now we can actually take a look at the interior of the model. Here's the thing. Obviously it is a lot more closed up than the official set. The official set had basically just bisected the entire build at a diagonal line right here, so you have full access to stuff, which was really nice, but also it wasn't complete. So let me just go ahead and move in and see what we can take a look at. First of all, stuff that I really appreciate about the original set, you have a recolor of the saxophone pieces being used as flowers. That is so clever. Same with a recolor of the LEGO Prince of Persia armor element, which has somehow still been cropping up in minifigure armor sets. We have that recolored in red for a really nice and realistic looking plant there. We've got usage of the mohawk element, specifically the orange mohawk from the Monkey Kid Sandy set, to be able to be used as a flower. And all of these do correspond to actual flowers, and the instruction manual for the actual set does showcase which ones these correspond to. This also opens up so you can get some access into the front part, oh my goodness, into the front part of the build itself. Probably would not recommend turning it just on this one brick here, because that is very easy to just break off if you're trying to turn it like that. But let's just rotate this around so we can see over here you have some of the same builds utilizing the saxophone elements. Let me see if we can get a top view here to really just be able to see on the inside of what sorts of stuff is included. Again, probably the only con to doing it this way is that so much of the beautiful detail is really obscured. They really used every ounce of space in this set. Like you can see as we move on in there are flowers inside there. One of them is utilizing the mop element, so really unique type of display.
And those are basically just hidden away. Like, those are super tucked away. It makes a lot of sense for minifigures to be exploring this space, but also as a human who wants to appreciate the types of builds and the types of unique things to be found in here, it's really difficult to just find anything. Even in here, I'm really struggling to get my camera to fit in to get this at a good angle to showcase this particular type of plant. Pros and cons, because it feels realistic to an actual garden, like this is something that you would see in the real world. But also it's a little bit hard to get minifigures in and get hands in to play with, especially with the giant tree in the center. That being said, the entire goal was to make this fully closed up, and that has been accomplished here, which is just so nice. And I think that overall, even though the interior is a bit obscured, it makes sense because this is a botanical garden, so you do want to have a fully closed up interior. Now this just closes up, like so. If I don't knock pieces off, I think something just fell off there. Let me just get this reattached. The one thing is that yes, it is a little bit difficult to get the roof just back on and in alignment because there are so many different pieces that just have to fit together just right. You have to be careful when putting it around the trees as well. So let me just get this centered up here. There we go, and get these pieces attached as well. So once you have it pressed down, it is pretty much good to go. And there you have it. This is the modular botanical garden. It is so nice. I think that this is one of the best rebuilds I've ever done of any official LEGO set. It is very rare that I actually rebuild a LEGO set. Usually for 99.9% of my sets, I keep them in the standard configuration that they came in the original set. But this was just too good to pass up. It is an absolute heater of a set. I love the original set, and this mod just makes it so much better. I love the foliage of the kind of vibrant magenta pieces being used on the outside here. I love how inviting the entrance is. Like, if you look at this straight on, it feels so inviting. I saw a number of other mocks out there that tried to make it a little bit more modular into a modular city street, like making the road gray and whatnot and removing some of the ponds. And I like that. But I also really like this, probably a lot more because this feels like a genuine botanical garden that you can find in a park. It feels like a place that I want to visit. Like, I want to go here in real life. It's just so complete, it's so nice. Really the only con is that this feels a little bit awkward, how there is a very blatant exposed Technic beam here. But maybe that's so you can attach other stuff to it. I don't really know essentially why this piece was used in particular. Maybe it's because if you look at the spare pieces left, like, there's nothing they could have used to just cover that up. There's literally nothing left. So I guess for out of necessity, the fact that this pretty much just uses 2 copies of the original set and that's it is so impressive. So overall, I'm a huge fan of how this turned out. Would highly recommend getting the instructions from the Brick Artisan. All of the additional pieces were present in my own collection. The rarest one was just this rounded element, which I had used from a second copy of Zane's Ice Dragon Creature, which I had bought to make the mech version, so that kind of paid its dividends forwards, because otherwise I did not have another spare copy of this large curved element, the white plate, in my collection. Otherwise, it was just using basically standard pieces to have this be put together, and the end result is so nice. That's about it for this video, but thanks for watching, and now it's time to integrate this into my LEGO city.
Alright, with that, we have summed up what happens when you take 2 copies of the Botanical Gardens and a few spare parts and mash them together into one amazing build. I cannot wait to integrate this newly modular building style of set into my city. Obviously, I have just gotten a chance to expand my city with a brand new set of shelves, so I can really start to integrate more and more buildings. There, of course, are already a lot of amazing LEGO Friends buildings in my city. We've got the art school here, we've got the hotel, we've got the assembly theater. All of these are LEGO Friends buildings, which I've actually put into my main city, but this may be the best of them yet. So I cannot wait to actually add this in. Obviously, there's still a lot of stuff I'm moving around. This is kind of a staging grounds right now until I have all my buildings ready for integration into my LEGO city. I can't wait to actually have this amazing botanical garden put into the city itself, but I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know down in the comments below if you are planning on building any of these particular sets, especially if you're planning on buying 2 copies and combining them, because because I do know that, again, there are instructions out there for combining both of these into one building without even needing any additional pieces if you don't really care about it being part of a modular building layout. And so that about sums up this look at one of my favorite LEGO Friends sets of all time. This may be one of the best ones they've ever done, the amazing Botanical Gardens. Thank you all so much for tuning in to Duckbricks. Be sure to like and subscribe for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon. And bye for now.